Have you ever felt like you were drowning in your setbacks and failures, and you were wondering whether or not you were going to make it? You were questioning your purpose in life. You were questioning your direction in life. Trust me, I've been there. I know what it's like. And this video is going to help you solve that problem today. Welcome to the Words for Change podcast. This is Lionel. Once again, I'm excited that you have decided to stop and give me your time and attention. I promise you, this video is going to change your life if you listen closely. Every challenge you experience in your life is shaping you into the best version of the person you desire to be. I'm going to talk about that here today, and I'm going to share my personal experience with you of facing an incredible hardship in my own life while trying to build a church and trying to build a religious and spiritual community. How those experiences and those struggles have transformed my life and transformed not only just my life, but has transformed my faith, but has transformed the way I think about God and transformed the way I think about my relationship with myself. Because as we discover what God and how God uses these trials and how God uses hardship, the tough moments in our lives, that leads us toward a future that is filled with hope and a future that is filled with purpose. In Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare and plans for hope, plans to give you a purpose and plans to not harm you. Listen to that. God's plan is to give you a future and to give you hope. God has a purpose for everything you're going through. Now, the key point here is this. Number one, God's plans for us are often includes, watch this, trials and failure. And what we need to understand about trials and failures, that these are not meant to harm us, but they are meant to help us grow. Jesus used an example that unless a seed falls into the ground and dies, it can't bear much fruit. But the first thing the seed must do, that it must die. And death is a painful process. Back in 2012, God called me to start a church. And I remember when I started this church, I was super excited about all the possibilities of creating a community, a faith community. But the vision was to take that church community, take that religious community, and help people to live out the actual words of Jesus Christ, and then let that gospel message then flow into the community and begin to cause social transformation. Now, in order to create this community, you have to have people around you and volunteers that will help you. Now, in order to make that happen, you have to have people who are helping you, because you can't do it by yourself. You have to have volunteers give their time and energy in order to help you accomplish that goal. And I remember getting a phone call from a group of people that we had worked with as a core team for months in advance. We had worked and planned and plotted how we would make all of this happen. And we were super excited about the experience that we were forming a community. And so the vision was actually happening, that we have formed a community, and that community was now, that core team was now beginning to go out into the community and make an impact. As we were moving toward our very first service, volunteers start to call out or start to not show up. And it caused a strain on other people, and particularly my own family, who were now having to pick up the slack for those who were not showing up. And if you know anything about building something, if you know anything about building an organization, you know anything about building a community, every hand on deck is as important as anything else. So you need everybody present. And so I remember several volunteers start to be inconsistent. And one morning, 5:30 in the morning, I get a text message, and the text message is from one of my key volunteers, one of my key core members. Called me and said that they decided that they did not want to participate in the church plan. And it broke my heart. And I got up in the morning because we had to put out signs for the church on the local street so that people who were visiting would know where to get to. Or people driving down the street would see, oh, if I'm looking for a church, boom, there's a church I want to go to. Let me go check it out. So it had the banner with the service times, all things that were very important. We had signs that were up next to the school where we were having church. We started our church out in the elementary school. And so we're super excited about the fact that the local community had got behind us and was willing to help participate in this growth project. And so I remember getting that text message, and I got up 5:30 in the morning, and it's raining outside. I'm going along the street and I'm putting up signs. I remember saying to God, is this it? When you've worked so hard with a group of people and you've labored and you've prayed together and you've worked together, you've had lunch together, had dinner together, and your kids have played together, and you're really creating a surrogate family, so to speak. And then you find yourself where you trusted these people, you trusted individuals who now are sort of having second thoughts. And so your mind begins to think, well, why didn't they tell me earlier? Why didn't they tell me before that they were having second thoughts? Why did they wait till the last minute when we were on the precipice of launching and people showing up for the very first time that they did not want to participate? So you get hurt, get offended. You feel somewhat betrayed by that kind of experience. And so if you are a young person, you are listening to this and you are starting something new, I'm going to tell you that you're going to have people who will break your heart. You're going to have people who will betray you, and you're going to have people who will tell you one thing and do something quite different. I would say, number one, pastors go through a lot of hardship, and some of it has to do with the fact that you can't trust people. You want to, and I'm not saying that all pastors don't trust people, but people will betray you. Jesus experienced this himself with his very disciples. People who were closest to you are the ones that can hurt you the most. And so that's what happened to me. And so what happens to a lot of pastors is once they have that experience time after time after time, and they go through that time and again, they can become jaded. They can become depressed. They can begin participating in activities that are not helpful for them, that are harmful actually to the purpose. In other words, they can begin to sabotage their own success because they haven't dealt with the mental health struggles that they have. And so I'm telling you, it is very possible that a lot of what you're seeing is that in the news is pastors and ministers and church leaders haven't dealt with their own demons through counseling, through therapy, and just continue working time and then time again without getting the help they need. And as a result, they begin to fall into these kind of patterns and behaviors that are very, very unhealthy because they never dealt with their trouble and because they never had dealt with their pain. And so I remember saying to myself that dark, rainy morning, God, is this it? Is this what I signed up for? And it is not that I didn't think that I would have hardship. It was just that the people who were closest to me were the ones who hurt me the most. And so here's what I learned. Number one, I learned something about resiliency. I've learned that hardship builds resiliency. Number one, I learned that faith is tested when you're desiring to succeed. We never learn what God truly wants for us until we go through hardship. And what going through that hardship does is that it gives God an opportunity to help shape and mold you and mold your character through these hard, difficult circumstances. So trials can teach us to let go of control, to trust God's plan. What we can learn from loss is just as important of what we can learn from success. Because what loss does is when you don't have enough, guess what happens? It fosters creativity. What does betrayal teach us? Why it's important to value true friendship. Job's friends betrayed him when he needed them the most. The Bible talks about this book of Job, how when he was at his lowest point, what Job realized is not that you have people around you, it's that you have to have the right people around you. I learned that there's such a thing as falling forward. As a matter of fact, John Maxwell wrote a book called Falling Forward. And the concept of falling forward is that hardship pushes you toward self-discovery. Hardship pushes you and I toward self-discovery. What's truly important in self-discovery and in suffering is that suffering shapes us and shapes the people around us. Suffering shapes our character. Suffering shapes our integrity. Suffering shapes who we become in the inside, not on the outside. In Philippians, when Paul says, in order for me to reign with Christ, I need to learn how to suffer like Christ suffered. I need to share in the, as he calls, the fellowship of his suffering, because suffering chisels into us this version of character, the true version of ourselves. That's what the power of suffering does. It's transformative. It transforms you and it transforms everyone around you. Well, we can learn this very important thing, that we need to embrace hardship. Don't run away from it, right? Hardship are a part of God's plan for our lives. And even if you're not religious, hardships can still help shape your moral character and make you a truly authentic person, which is something we need desperately in our society today. So God has a greater plan for you. And suffering is part of that process and part of how God helps you reach your plan. So trust God's timing. Trust God's process. Even trust the hardships that you are going through, because these hardships make you the person that you need to become. Now, if you found this message helpful, I need you to stay tuned for the next video right here as I share more about how suffering helps develop your character. Don't want to miss it. Salute. Till next time, I'm out.